to everybody that's here in person and online. My name is Phoebe Bain. I'm a reporter at Marketing Brew, which is Morning Brew's marketing and advertising vertical. So I report on the marketing and advertising industry. And here we are for a conversation about NIL and influencer marketing. So without further ado, I'll just invite everybody else on stage to introduce themselves and say, your name, what you do, why you're here, etc.
Thank you so much, Phoebe. It's great to be here. I'm Andrew Mavis. I'm the CEO and co-founder of 98 Strong. We are a full-service marketing platform that helps brands win over Gen Z through a variety of different services that we'll speak about today. I was a former student athlete, water polo player at George Washington University, so started this to bring value to student athletes just like myself, and really excited to chat more.
Hello, I'm Steven Vigilante. I'm the head of growth and partnerships at Olipop, which is a healthy soda brand that's available here in the other room, and we're a client of 98 Strong, and I manage everything from NIL, college athlete partnerships, all the way up to Camila Cabello, Bruno Mars type partnerships for us.
Hi, I'm Kyla Hill. I am a sprinter on Fordham University's track and field team, and I do some work with 98 Strong. They've helped me get some deals and do some partnerships.
Hi everybody, my name's Nico Katsuyoshi. I am a student athlete on the wrestling team at Harvard. In my junior year, I'm on a gap year, so that's why I could be here right now. Come from a TikTok background before wrestling in college, actually, and built a platform of 1 million people there, and have also worked with 98 Strong.
I'm Brendan Gann. I'm a partner and chief social officer at creative agency Mechanism. I've been in the creator space for a long time. Did my first influencer brand deal back in 2006. Sit on the VidCon advisory board, active in the creator economy.
Great, well, thanks so much for those intros. Andrew, I figured we could start with you, actually. I would love to hear a little bit about what 98 Strong is, why you built it, and how it came to be.
Yeah, so how it came to be is pretty crazy. I never thought that, I would be a CEO and co-founder of a marketing agency. I was a water polo player my entire life. I started playing at 5. All I wanted to do was play professionally and go to the Olympics. And when I was a student athlete from 2016 to 2020, we had a lot of success. Got the opportunity to go play professionally in Belgrade, Serbia, in the midst of the pandemic. And I ignored everybody's warnings to go over there. And unfortunately, I got COVID really sick, really bad, in the fall of 2020, and it messed up my heart and lungs. And ultimately, my playing career was over. So I came home back to my parents' house, and I was like, what am I gonna do with my life? Literally, had no idea. And then my co-founder is not here. We grew up playing water polo forever. He ended up playing water polo at Harvard. Had this idea to bring sponsorship to student athletes just like myself, because we noticed this huge disparity of the 2% getting massive brand deals and the other 98% that aren't seeing any value. So we started this to bridge the gap, and through that have helped numerous brands, whether that's Olipop or Beyond Meat, win over Gen Z, whether that's through surveys to help them figure out what Gen Z thinks of their brand, product, innovation, or that's content creation, as Nico is himself an amazing content creator, all the way to our most popular service was influencer marketing, which we've done a lot with Steven at Olipop. We get really targeted in terms of retailer support or product launches at scale with 20 student athletes or even 1,000 at once, which makes us super unique in the space.
Yeah, good point. I know I feel like something that a lot of people don't talk about is as marketers, Gen Z is the newest generation that people have been marketing to, but this is, the generation of student athletes that we're working with right around, this NIL update time. So really anybody can answer this, but Brendan, I feel like you would have sort of a good idea as to how to answer this question. But overall, how much do you think that agencies and brands are really focusing on the Gen Z consumer right now? Is it really a top focus? And then where are they seeing the best results in attracting that demographic? But don't say TikTok.
I feel like it's a little bit of a leading question, because I think you see the most results in reaching Gen Z via influencers. And overall, I would say that they're underinvesting. I think it's, sure, influencer marketing, creator economy is a hot topic, but it's still widely underdeveloped. And I don't think most brands and agencies take the time to really invest in it deeply as a discipline and form what I think are really meaningful partnerships with creators. So much of the industry is still driven sort of by very transactional. We're gonna do one campaign and we say, check that box that we did an influencer marketing activation. And they're not investing in sort of both cultivating meaningful relationships with creators, but also investing in learnings and kind of like adapting to the environment around there. They're just sort of doing one-offs and, oh great, it worked or it didn't, and moving on and losing all those learnings. And you wouldn't do the same thing with like a TV buy, buy one TV ad and then walk away. And so I think overall it's really, there's not enough investment in the space.
I would add to that original content and storytelling. I think the brands that launched in the mid 2015, 2016 era were like acquiring customers on Facebook for $3 and didn't have to do a lot of the storytelling and like the deeper dives from a marketing perspective that the good brands are doing today. And now that acquiring customers has become much more difficult online, like storytelling and original content and how that surfaces in your social media, particularly on TikTok. You can't just like do the aesthetic thing on TikTok. It doesn't work. You need to be entertaining or educational. And the brands that I think are speaking to Gen Z are doing a really good job of storytelling on that platform.
Yeah, Stephen, from the brand perspective, what do you feel like the true value is in student athletes being leveraged as, a community of, say there's, 50 student athletes in a program versus just like one high profile influencer? Like what's the comparative value as a brand?
The most direct answer to that question would be the geo-targeting element of it. It's very hard to, especially like we're nationwide at Walmart and Target as of the last 6 months, and then places like Publix, which blanket Florida. It's like, how do you really activate in Florida? There's only so many influencers that have an outsized reach there that all cost a lot of money to work with, versus Andrew put together a campaign for us of 25 student athlete creators all across Florida, from Florida State to Miami to UF. To up to Jacksonville and Georgia, that helped us kind of blanket the Publix market and like did it cost effectively. And most big influencers are like everybody else online. They over-index in LA, New York, San Francisco, Chicago, and very few of them over-index in Raleigh, Durham, or Texas State or College Station down in Texas. And so I love like the geo-targeting element and what it can do within their social circles in those college towns.
Yeah, I guess beyond the geo-targeting element, Brendan, I feel like you'd probably have a good answer to this as well, or even you, Andrew, but what is, can you tell me like some other advantages of targeting this population?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think definitely the geo-targeting is a big one. I think the ability to sort of tap into the next generation of athletes is a big one in terms of like building credibility with. Like, I think the most powerful brand activations and partnerships with creators is one where you treat it like a traditional athlete endorsement, where you develop long-term partnerships. And the earlier you can get down that funnel, the more credibility you can build with creators and with your audience, versus sort of like doing a one-off and then you walk away and then that creator then has to go and work with somebody else, work with a competitive brand. If you can form that connection and work with the creator on an ongoing basis for years on years, you're able to maintain the brand credibility and not dilute it by allowing them to go work with somebody else.
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting because, like what does a long-term partnership mean? A, when, NIL is so new, it's like a year and a half old, right? But also when these people are typically in school for, 4 years or sometimes even less. Kyla, what are your thoughts on that? Like, do you, if a brand was approaching you and wanted to have sort of like a lifelong partnership with you or an ongoing working relationship with you, how would that work when you're sort of planning, your life up until senior year?
Right, so I have been blessed to have another year because of COVID. So I actually have 5 years of eligibility, and so I would be able to work with brands longer. I think when NIL first started, I got reached out to by a social media manager for a electric headphone type company, and I got one deal with them, and then they told me they would continue to reach out to me because the work that I did for them was great, and I thought it was really exciting because that was my first relationship and partnership with a company within the space of NIL. I never thought that deals were an option for me. Coming from a sport like track and field, I would say it gets a lot less attention than bigger sports that make more money. And so it's really just a great opportunity to know that I will be able to work with brands and companies in the long term as well.
Amazing, yeah. And then really anyone can answer this question, but what is the value of working with, micro-influencers that are also student athletes in the space versus the NFL quarterback, right?
Yeah, I can speak to that to start. I think the biggest thing is, and I've always looked at this from the beginning, is you could drop $100K to sponsor that athlete in the 1%, and you could have a lot of impressions, and that's awesome, but on social, you're gonna have between 2%, 3% engagement, you're gonna have 2 to 3 pieces of content, depending on the size of the deal, or you could spend infinitely less to get between 20 to 50 student athletes that are water polo players, track and field, that have a following that is significantly more engaged and authentic, that actually drives meaningful ROI on social. Like over the past 50 brand campaigns we've done, we've averaged 15% engagement. That is 5x industry average on social media. And that's all through the power of students that are up here on this stage, that have this following that is campus-based, that is all tied to them and actually know them. And maybe it's not 100,000 followers on Instagram, but the relationship there is real, and that's what drives results for brands.
Yeah, I guess what I'm most curious about coming from there is that, obviously you said that you were lucky and got 5 years, right, with COVID, depending on how you spin it. But, when you're thinking about making really long-term partnerships with influencers, there are brand ambassadors, for brands like Tory Burch or, many other places that have been brand ambassadors for these brands for decades. So, what is this, 4 years of college time limit? How does that factor into creating relationships between brands and influencers?
I can answer that. I think of it as these are people that are going to be young moms in 5 years, right? And teachers and firefighters and whoever in their own communities, and building the relationships now doesn't mean you have to stop working with them when they're not playing their sport anymore, right? I think this long tail of influencer marketing is the future, and most brands I know that play in my world are moving away from the big splashy influencer buys, partially because a lot of those creators have been around for 4 or 5 years and have been doing a brand deal a week, and it doesn't cut through anymore. As opposed to we're sponsoring this nationwide moms walk in 100 different cities in November, and it's a fair amount of product we're sending out, but it's much more I don't know, I think high impact and unique than a big splashy influencer athlete buy. And these are all people that are going to grow into those roles over the next 5 years anyway. We're actually about to sign an 11-year-old skateboarder, which is kind of crazy.
That's cool.
Yeah, that is really cool. So, Brendan, back to the Gen Z topic that I was asking you about earlier. Do you feel like agencies, or even brands, but agencies, need to be collecting more data on Gen Z in terms of what does the Gen Z influencer and then therefore consumer want? Where do you think that space is going in terms of data to tell you these answers?
I mean, definitely you can always collect more data. I would argue that oftentimes, I don't think they're paying enough attention to the data that's already out there. I mean, there's this stat I came across the other day, 34% of Gen Z learns about finance through social media. That's their primary source. I think news, social is their primary source. It is their biggest input, and creators, at every study, every experience I've had in terms of ad campaigns that we've done, creators are the best way to engage Gen Z. I don't think it's a secret. I think it really needs to sort of sink in, and people need to take action and start to invest in that and have that level of investment reflect the impact that it has, and it's not there yet. That said, assuming you are doing that, I mean, Olipop, you guys are doing that, in which case then you can start to get really granular, I think, and do more data and data collection. And I think what 98 Strong is doing in terms of the ability to poll the audiences and get essentially real-time insights in terms of what Gen Z is paying attention to across a variety of topics is really valuable. But I would say overall, most of the data is not really being taken in and acted upon anyways. Let's make it a little bit negative.
Yeah, well, I mean, what do you mean by that last comment?
Well, most ad campaigns, the ad dollars don't reflect the investment. The ad dollars don't reflect where the attention is really being spent and where eyeballs are and where it's most impactful, which is, these guys essentially.
So, Stephen, from a brand perspective, what do you think of that?
I wouldn't say we're like the most rigorously analytical, data-driven marketing business. I've always kind of lived in this world of like marketing is definitely part art, part science. I think we, and a lot of brands, especially during COVID, got kind of trapped in like this hyper data-driven, lowest customer acquisition cost, yada yada. And I think if you're constantly focusing on that, you're never gonna like be able to take bets and do things that may not have like the highest ROI in the moment, but might help with longer term growth. And so we've flipped our entire media mix over the last 3 months to move away from like what I would call direct response marketing and actually into more of this like top of funnel eyeballs. What specific markets are we going after? What type of people are we going after? Because we know as we grow, it's going to get harder and harder to like convince the next consumer to pay 2.5 times what they're going to pay for a Diet Coke. But we have to educate people over time, and not everyone's going to buy right away. But if you're always marketing to your lowest hanging fruit, you're never going to like grow the total pie. And so we've kind of made that psychological change in the last 6 months.
Yeah, Andrew, I know that 98 Strong is like a very data-oriented practice and company. So what are your thoughts about like, what's unique about sourcing data from Gen Z and student athletes in particular?
I think when you talk about just the student athlete in general, everyone looks at them as athletes. What they are is this very incredible segment within it that have the most influence out there. So when you're actually doing those surveys and getting that data insight, you're able to figure out what Gen Z thinks as a whole because they're those thought leaders on campus that are arguably the most respected people that are a part of that community. So that allows us to then leverage that data and then lean into campaigns, figure out what they think, and then a brand can come to us and say, we want to know what they think of our new product launch. Athletes will respond and what they think and say and feel about that brand's new product, and then that messaging can be applied to that campaign to resonate directly with the rest of Gen Z consumers. And that can be pretty powerful in terms of like messaging behind an activation.
We haven't even touched on like the parent angle either. The parents of these kids are also a very interesting like pocket of exposure for us because they're all excited that we're now partnering with their kids, and they, Nico even just told me that his parents love Olipop, and like that to me is super cool, right? And like how would I reach that audience otherwise? And so I don't know. I love the model.
Yeah, Steven gave us a code that all the athletes would give to their parents.
No, that's a really good idea. I mean, like, from your perspective, obviously, like, we're talking about Gen Z, right? Because that's the generation that's currently in college with these student athletes. And if you can geo-target that area, it's this young population, especially in most college towns. But yeah, thinking about their parents is honestly a really interesting thought exercise almost. How much time do you guys spend, like, factoring the parents that are flying and at every single game and, traveling to see these kids and engaged on social and, maybe they're not posting on TikTok, but they're reposting these things that their children are creating to their Facebooks, and right? Like, how much time and energy is spent factoring parents into this entire equation?
In terms of like when we're selecting talent and stuff like that, none. It's like it's a great thing that happens with it, but through our geo-targeted campaigns, if Steven's like, hey, we're launching Walmart in these 3 regions, like the value really is that like we're able to see by zip codes, this university is less than a mile away from this Walmart. And parents get involved with that, and that's awesome, but it's the idea of that student body knowing where to purchase the product. And then that parents come along with it, it's just like an added bonus of value. It's not really something we necessarily consider as we're like preparing for a campaign.
Yeah, Stephen and Brendan, I mean, I'm curious to hear your thoughts about that. The idea that like, are student athletes as influencers, should they only be used to target Gen Z? Is that the main purpose of working with student athletes as influencers? Or, I know there's like the added bonus of their parents, coming along for the ride, but like from the agency and brand perspective, how much is that a factor for you?
The parents specifically? Yeah, I would say generally, ultimately we start with, we try and start with a blank slate whenever we're starting a campaign and establish like a filter, like what is our criteria to reach the target demo? And we'll take into account demographics, psychographics like interests, verticals, etc. And whatever kind of passes through that we'll work with creators that will help us reach that target. And if it's student athletes, to get to the parents, we'll do that, so long as the data reflects it, essentially.
Yeah, I think the campus level focus is the most important. We have a Mississippi State cheerleader that I've been paying to make TikToks for the last 6 months, and she like posted a video, this insane tailgate from their first game back in September, and it was her parents' tailgate that they throw at every game, so now we sponsor that tailgate. And that's just like, I'm always looking for those little things to like, that make sense for our product and where we can fit in naturally and organically. We sponsor like the Vanderbilt women's soccer team to have a dinner together once a month. There's like little things like that that I think are unique and different that other brands at our size and scale are not doing. And that maybe like a Coke or Pepsi couldn't pull off just of like where they sit in the world. And so that's like very grassroots, but I think it's important for building long-term brand affinity.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm also curious to hear what all of you think about how TikTok plays into this conversation. Obviously, it's, been considered the Gen Z app kind of since it started, but like, how much can you talk about, student athlete influencers and NIL without talking about TikTok? How important do you think TikTok is to this conversation?
Nico?
I mean, TikTok's huge, and I was doing TikTok in summer 2019. I think right around the time where it rebranded from Musical.ly. And there weren't a lot of brand deals to start because it seemed to be a very young audience, and not a lot of people were on the app yet. But over time, I've gotten to work with brands like Hollister. Andrew and I just did something with IHOP, which was pretty cool. I got to take all my friends to lunch. But no, TikTok's a great place, but I think you need a creator-first type person, not necessarily an NIL college athlete, because I think both are different skill sets, and it's hard to get a college athlete to be making TikToks.
Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think at my school, we've tried to have team TikToks several times, and none of us were really familiar with how to market ourselves, I would say, or were, so they never really succeeded. And so I think the mindset of being a creator is definitely necessary when you're trying to make a successful platform.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, I think TikTok still very much over-indexes Gen Z. And I will say it's mind-blowing, the level of engagement in terms of brand activations we've done on TikTok is just insane. I saw some stats from TikTok, and brand channels on average get organic reach of 118%. And then, you compare that to Facebook or Instagram where you're getting single digits. So the ability to reach audiences is crazy. It very much over-indexes Gen Z, but I do think it's worth noting that, at this point now, TikTok, everybody's on it. I think it's a third of Americans or something. And so kind of just pigeonholing it as Gen Z, I think is almost doing it a disservice, because at this stage, I think it's 80% of the audience is over the age of 20 or ballpark. So it's pretty mainstream at this point.
Yeah, I work for a startup, and yesterday I had an investor recognize me from TikTok. And I think he was 30, so it was kind of weird to be meeting people in the business world that recognized me through creator economy stuff.
Right on. No, I think the biggest thing is when you're working with student athletes on TikTok, or just students in general, is you can't brief them. I don't know how else to put this. You can't put too many parameters behind it. It's we did a small thing with you guys that it didn't have crazy impressions, no doubt, but the content around it was strong, because it's just go film what you would usually do. Just take a day in the life, or film a viral video that just has the product featured. So many of these sponsored content that I see from other athletes not really involved with 98 is oh, this is Olipop, it's awesome because XYZ. And it's not their authentic content around it. That's just them having fun that goes to the For You page a lot more than just sitting there talking about the product.
Yeah, I feel that's a common recommendation that comes up among influencer marketers is, this is a successful medium because it's supposed to be authentic, right? But at the same time, I think for brands, kind of taking that hands-off, let the creator drive the ship approach can be a little bit nerve-wracking. What would you say, Stephen, to that?
No, I totally agree. I always tell people, I want to sponsor your content. I don't want sponsored content. So like, keep doing what you're doing. Give me a video that you know is going to perform well in your algorithm on your page. We had tried to do a bunch of dedicated videos at the beginning, and we wasted like $25,000 on them, and it would literally be like someone who consistently get 100,000 views, and then our video got like 3,000. I was like, all right, this doesn't work. And so we have like a product placement strategy where I'll literally pay creators who typically eat junk food every single time they swap an Olipop for their typical soda. And we've hit like 400 million views on those videos in the last 6 months, which is probably 10x what we would have hit on an influencer campaign on Instagram, with probably more budget on Instagram too. So that's like the exponential reach, as long as you are letting the creator do their thing on TikTok, is worth it. If your product is available, that's the other thing. Like some of these smaller brands we were talking about earlier, like that strategy doesn't really work if you're not widely available in retail, because people at least in the food and beverage world, don't leave the app to buy a product online. They want it to be available in Walmart or Target or wherever they shop, and so that's why that works for us. I don't know how well it would work for everyone though.
Yeah, we have like 3 minutes left here, but I would love to finish up by kind of having everybody go down the line. Maybe we can start with Brendan, and saying what you've learned about Gen Z while working with or as a student athlete influencer in the past year and a half.
What have I learned about Gen Z and working with student athlete influencers? That's a good question. I think in general, it's kind of drafting off what you were saying, almost like meeting them where they are and amplifying, like pouring gasoline on the fire of what they're already doing and what they're already passionate about is definitely the way to go. And if you do that, the level of engagement you can get, particularly with TikTok right now, is just, it's mind-blowing. But you have to sort of get that Venn diagram of like what the creator does well, what the audience expects, and then the brand message in there. If it's just the brand message and you're neglecting the other two, it'll fall flat.
I think a lot of student athletes don't necessarily care about the money because they have small audiences. A lot of my friends just love getting free products, whether that's like drinks or electrolyte packages, whatever. They'll like gladly accept and promote free products.
Yeah, I would say I agree. The products are really nice to have, and just the recognition as an athlete and as someone who matters to be able to go on social media and market for a company. Like I said before, as a track athlete, it doesn't really feel like you matter. Your sport is so small, not really paid attention to, and so to have that recognition from brands, companies, it feels really great.
I think, to answer the question directly, humor and like being real as a brand matter way more to the younger generation than the older generation. Like we spend probably almost equal, if not more, time on comments we leave on TikTok as we do on the content itself. And we've had, I don't know, 10 plus comments hit 20,000 likes, and like it matters. It really matters. And I've had multiple people who are in like the agency world reference our comments in like agency pitch decks to brands, which I think is insane because it's just like me in bed writing random shit, but like sometimes it works. And people want that. They don't want this like stuffy brand that just gives a generic emoji response or whatever. And we'll like respond to people if people say it doesn't taste good. Like I'll give like a snarky response, like just because like I think it works and I think it's different, and it's seeming to work for us.
I think the biggest thing is when it comes to influencers is that, and student athletes as a whole, is that follower count doesn't matter. Some of our top performers in campaigns have 2,000 followers, and they will literally get 60 comments from all of their friends. Where can I buy it? How can I buy it? And then we might pay somebody that has 70,000 followers significantly more to lead the campaign or whatever, and the results are significantly worse. And that's really the value of these student athletes. It's their audience that they know. It's their audience that actually cares about them and what they're promoting, what they're putting in their bodies. That's driving value, and that's the coolest thing.
Yeah, they're never like, it's never like, oh, you sold out. It's like they're so excited that the brand is supporting them. And I see it with big creators too, because I work with a handful of creators that are like 18 to 22, have like several million followers, and people like are obsessed with us because we pay the creators, and that's very different. That did never ever happen on Instagram.
Great. Thank you so much for all those insights, everybody, and thank you to everyone that tuned in.